Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsco.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have David Avrin, who is, check this out, ladies and gentlemen, he is a master of all he surveys, apparently. But when he's not doing that, he's also a keynote speaker, an author, a consultant, and also CEO of a company called Visibility International. David, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show today. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So, David, with a title like that, Master of All He Surveys, you have to tell us a bit about yourself and the work you do, because, just to fill us in, because that's some headline.
You know what? You're funny to even say that. Like you, I deal with customer experience. I think we all have our own sort of definition of what that is. I have a brand new book out called Why Customers Leave and How to Win Them Back. And I think that sort of encapsulates what it is that I talk about, which is I think there's a lot that we can do about helping to create a great customer experience. But first, we got to fix everything that doesn't work or it doesn't really resonate. So what I do is I travel across North America. I travel around the world. I just got back from Bogota, Colombia. A month ago, I was in Abu Dhabi, and I work with organizations to sort of take a step back and understand things from their customers' perspective. There's a lot of people who do various aspects. It was kind of interesting. When I was in Bogota, they define customer experience very differently because there are a lot of BPOs, the business process organizations. So they're the people that we outsource things to, right? Call centers and logistics. And so for them, customer experience was how do you efficiently get people through the customer cycle, right? The vendors at this conference were people selling headsets and cubicles and things like that. And of course, we sort of define it as the next iteration of customer service. How are people experiencing doing business with you? So as I travel around the world, I have a real great opportunity to get some different perspectives of how organizations see it. And then I consult and I speak and I write books.
Perfect. Now, you did mention you got this new book out, Why Customers Leave and How to Win Them Back. Now, I'm really interested in getting authors and other professionals and leaders and thought leaders and practitioners and everybody else kind of in this sort of space onto the podcast to explore kind of like their views and their perspectives. Like you just shared a story about how different people define customer experience for different parts of the world, which is fascinating. But tell me about the book and how it came about, and also kind of what's its main thesis, because like.
Sure.
Having written, now 3 books, I know that there's generally a germ of an idea that tends to turn into the book.
Yeah, well, the germ of the idea came from, I had a couple of decades of speaking and teaching and writing books on marketing and branding and how do you stand out and stand apart in a very competitive marketplace. And what I found was time and time again, these organizations were doing a phenomenal job, and I was helping them in attracting customers and clients and prospects only to piss them off. I mean, you can tell somebody how much some of these companies spend billions of dollars creating an amazing value proposition, great products and services, attracting customers. And then, it doesn't mean anything when you tell us that our call is very important to you, and then you put us on hold for 45 minutes. Well, you know what? Apparently our call was not very important because you didn't staff appropriately. The things that companies were doing to drive customers away, perfectly good, paying, eager, qualified customers, was mind-boggling to me. So I set about doing some research, and what I came to find, I had sort of a notebook with me. I kept jotting down ideas. Now, many of them were anecdotal, things that I was going through as well, circumstances where I would just hit my head with my hand going, why are they doing this? And it was the genesis for the book. And so what was interesting was of course, before you do it, you got to look at what else is out there in the marketplace. I always make sure I don't read competitors' books because I never want to inadvertently include something that wasn't my idea. But I was looking, there was a lot of really amazing books, but they were very research driven and all of very, very important. But I don't think that there was a need in the marketplace for another one. So I thought, what if I write it from the voice of the customer? Not just because it's going to be a bigger audience. I don't think customers necessarily want to say, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I go through. But I think businesses need to hear that your policies and procedures, and I understand where they came from about creating this level of predictability and efficiency in your system, but here is how it's perceived by your customers. And so I'd actually talked to a literary agent who had read the original book proposal, and she came back to me and she says, where's your research to back up all of these assertions? And I said to her, you know what? Not only do I not want to write that book, I don't want to read that book.
Sure.
I think there's plenty of those books out there.
Yep.
Now, of course, I had enough people that I ran everything by and got great stories, but it has been surprising to me how well this book has resonated of people saying, it sounds like you're in my business, or, oh my gosh, I hate that too. Because here's the thing that, Adrian, you and I both know, is that for everybody, our primary role in the economy is as a consumer. So even if we're a business owner, most of what we do is as a consumer. You may own a business, but you're still going to the grocery store. You're still going and buying electronics or hiring services or people to fix your lawn or repair your house. And so the universal things that we go through, I try to articulate and to help business owners see it from that perspective.
Perfect. So the other thing that I really like that stood out for me when I was taking a look at the book is you admit that the book is a bit of a rant, and I quite like rants, particularly if they're kind of like sort of destructive in a positive way, but also constructive, if you know what I mean.
Right. But we rant, don't we?
It's like we've got friends. It's a natural thing, And so what I wanted to do to give people a bit of a flavor of the book is to invite you to get your rant on and to tell us about three of the chapters in the book. And I picked some out. So the first one I wanted to ask you about was this idea of don't be hard to reach.
This is honestly the number one offense of organizations. And so much of it is inadvertent. Listen, at the end of every chapter of the book, I have three little sections, which one is why you do it. And I explain, I understand the rationale behind it, why we hate it, and here's a better approach. The absolute number one reason that we drive away customers, let me back up a second. The biggest source of lost revenue for your business, everybody listening right now, the biggest source of lost revenue is the customer, the client, the prospect that you never knew about because there was something that drove them away. And the number one is being hard to reach. And and everybody's gone through this. And as I speak, I always ask audiences, I said, how often have you gone to a company's website because you had a question to ask, or you had a problem you needed to resolve, or you're looking to try and track a package that was supposed to be delivered, and you cannot find a phone number anywhere? And I see all the heads nodding and everybody throwing up their hands like, oh my gosh, welcome to my life. And I'm like, do you understand? They made a conscious decision. They said, we are not going to let our customers call us or email us directly. And I mean, like, they think they are so good, like we are so good that we can even deny them the opportunity to call us and they're not going to leave. And it's so moronic. And so what do they do instead? They put a contact form. And the contact form is the worst possible decision because some web designer, some SEO person said, oh, I got a great idea. Don't put a phone, put a contact form, because here's what's so great about it. When they ask their question, we can capture their information so we can market to them later. Oh, even better, we can ask pre-qualifying questions. Now we can tailor our sales and our response. Well, here's the problem. The problem is we don't want to fill out your stupid form.
And here's the other problem is that most companies are rubbish at responding to requests that have been sent to them via contact forms.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's why we don't like to fill it out, because number one, we don't know who's going to get it. Number two, we have no idea if they're going to respond. And number three, which is the most important one, is we know there's somebody else who will respond. Excellent. The reason I do a lot of interviews and podcasts as well, and I have my own podcast, but people say, so your book is called Why Customers Leave. Tell us, why do customers leave? And I say, number one reason is because they can. Because there's so many choices. You're not everybody listening, you may be really good at what you're what you do. You haven't created the cure for cancer that tastes like chocolate. You're not that good. We leave because we can.
So
so easy.
Here's the interesting thing. It's like there was a guy, I can't remember. It's one of the. I don't know if I get this right or not, but there's a guy called one of the co-founders of a company called HubSpot. One of the co-founders is called Dharmesh, and there's a quote that somebody told me that comes from him that he said, "We want to make it almost systematically easy for our customers to leave, but emotionally difficult for them to leave." Which I think is a beautiful thing to say, because actually companies get it kind of like the wrong way around.
Right, exactly right, because they do onerous contracts that we can't get out of for our cell phones or things like that. But the reality is they're making it hard to leave, but we're eager to do so. So I love that concept. Yeah, because to make somebody, I mean, the reason we choose somebody to do business with for one simple reason, because we want to, right? We do business with somebody because we want to. When you make that frustrating for us. And as I said, the number one thing is making it very hard to get a hold of somebody, or even if you put them on hold and they're on hold for 20 minutes, that's the exact same thing. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody should be able to reach everybody every time, but we can do so much better at this. I mean, I'll be honest. I have 4 small businesses, and every one of them has a contact form. Yeah. But to be clear, they also have cell phone numbers, email addresses, no matter how somebody might want to get a hold of me, because I'm international, so I'm 24/7. I've got clients in Dubai and Singapore and Johannesburg. So if the phone rings at 2 a.m, we're answering it. I mean, this is my livelihood. And even a lot of my colleagues in the speaking world, you go to their websites. I mean, a lot of them, they just have a contact form. It says, okay, what's the date of your event? And what they don't realize is the meeting planners are calling multiple speakers. Not only have I talked to them, but we've got the gig, we've got the contract, and a deposit is on the way before they even respond. And they have no idea what they just lost or how many times we beat them just because we are remarkably easy to do business with.
Sure. So that's brilliant. So let me then move to a second one, because this is my favorite one, and it's only because of not because of its title, but the title just kind of made me smile. But perhaps I can tell you what this one is, and then you can tell me what it's about. And sure. So the one chapter is "Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining." So what's that all about?
Well, I will tell you, my publisher had a hard time with that and thought it would be very offensive. I'm like, no, I think it's a well-worn maxim. I think people understand that. The whole idea is like, just be honest with us. We're really smart people. There's people who play games all the time. And it is astonishing to me. I'll give you an example. It just happened this weekend. I had a client who was sending a FedEx to me on Friday, and they paid extra for it to be at my house at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. Didn't arrive. Called, didn't arrive. It may show up today. So here you go, FedEx, when it absolutely positively has to be there in maybe 3 or 4 days, right? But there's every excuse. You go to the airline counter. Oh, it looks like there's weather difficulties. It's 100 degrees outside. It's warm on both places. Just tell me the truth. How often do you, in your business, are dealing with somebody else and they say, oh, yeah, the check went out on Friday, and you're waiting for it. Oh, you know what? Our payroll person was out of the office, so it'll go out next week. And you know what they're doing? They're stalling. Just tell us the truth. No matter what it is, just tell us the truth. We're big people. Mm-hmm. We're big boys and girls. And we see that a lot with organizations. They try and sort of, give us a story to sort of get around something that didn't work. How refreshing is it when a company says, you know what? It was supposed to go out on Friday. It didn't go out. I'm going to follow up on it. I'm going to make sure that it happens. As a matter of fact, we're going to stop that. We're going to do a transfer payment. Just be a problem solver.
Sure.
But people shift the blame. They blame others. And so the whole idea is like, just tell us the truth. There's so many instances in business where people try to save face as opposed to being honest or authentic. Mm-hmm. And I just think we can do better.
I think you're absolutely right. So the last, the third one that I wanted to ask you about, and again, this is I think the book explores kind of lots of different things, but as you say, do it from the voice of the customer perspective.
Right.
But the third one I wanted to ask you about was your management fails to manage. So what's that about?
Well,
So it's like a big finger pointing at an organization.
Yeah, well, I think what it is, I think we realize when we're customers and we get poor service, sure, it's the person that we see, but it just means that somebody didn't care, especially if it's consistent. Somebody's got to be in charge. We get overly simplistic in terms of sometimes our admonitions to our staff, to our employees and others as well. Sometimes we think it's very, very simple. Like we'll tell them, this is very simple in customer service or whatever. And I think customer experience is, of course, much, much more in depth than customer service. But we tell them, just treat them like you want to be treated. Mic drop. Like that's the answer. It's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the reality is we aren't them.
Yes.
I mean, you have to do a lot more managing than just a simple admonition. You've got to have standards. Here's how we do it. Here's how we empower our employees to solve problems and not just quote regulations. I mean, it's another problem that we have in organizations is we spend a lot of time and effort recruiting the right employees, the right staff members. We interview them. We look at their background. We talk to them face to face. We ask them questions like, tell me a situation where you had to solve a problem. Tell me what you did. And as soon as we get through all of that, we hire them. Then we neuter them. Now we say, now just quote the policy, right? And how often do we have situations where our situation, our challenge, our question, our problem doesn't match your employee manual? Are we empowering our employees? I mean, all of the behavior, it starts at the top. It requires standards. It requires empowerment. It requires discipline. It requires consistency. And we see those organizations, those companies, those retailers, those restaurants where it isn't. They're either going through the motions or they're so busy that we seem to matter very little in what they do internally. So, I mean, I think that's sort of probably the broadest of all of them, of managers that fail to manage.
Yeah.
But you can see that. You can see when the companies that are very good, where everybody's consistent, there's a high level of adherence to company norms and company culture. That comes from management. Those are the people who say, this is who we are.
Sure.
This is how we do things, right? It's Disney. It's those kinds of things, right?
So, I mean, you mentioned kind of Disney kind of there. Now, kind of the thing I also kind of am interested in is almost exploring sort of new case studies, new examples and things, because Disney is a usual suspect,
right.
And there's nothing wrong with that because they are great at being consistent and raising the bar and delivering a great experience
right.
to
not everybody
have
has
done for
that
decades.
Not everybody, right?
No, not everybody can do that, but then not everybody can be a Disney, right? And that's one of the kind of challenges is that people look at say that the Apples and the Amazons and the Disneys,
right,
of this kind of world, and you look at it and just go, it's just too far away, it's just too hard. And so, have you spotted any sort of like standout companies or emerging companies that you just go, I think they're on the right track?
Right. You know what? Here's the interesting thing, and it may not be the answer that you're expecting, is that we see those all the time. And what I didn't want in this book, I didn't want to talk about Zappos and Disney and the same stories. I mean, we get them, and there's a reason why those become sort of the standard stories. But what I found in anecdotally, talking to a lot of people, but I set up a lot of conversations, that everybody has their own. Everybody has that one company, and sometimes it's a small retailer of somebody going, I love these guys, or this woman is like beyond unbelievable. And oftentimes it was an experience, it was a particular story, but the best of the best are the ones who do it consistently. One of the things I talk about in the book is that I'm not a big fan of wow moments. There's a lot of people that espouse creating wow moments. And I'm not, because I think it's hard to celebrate wow moments that somebody else had. Or how long are you going to milk the fact that one of your employees drove 100 miles to bring somebody a dress or excuse me, or a suit for a wedding or I mean, that's awesome. But the best ones are the consistent. This is how they do what they do. So I came across one, to answer your question, that I thought I'd never heard of this before. So my daughter had just turned 16 years old, got her driver's license. She's in the parking lot of her high school. And another girl hit her car, and she had gotten her license the day before. And I was like, unbelievable. So I found a local place in town that did car auto repair. And so we found the place. They were accepted by our insurance. Long story short, here's what was remarkable, is that her car was getting fixed. And every day I got a text message from her car. And they had set something up in the system, and it was their way of keeping me informed of where it was in the process. But the text messages were from her car saying, hey, just want you to know they're treating me great. Oh my gosh, I got the greatest bath today. And it was a little painful, but my front end looks so good. It should be and it just made me smile.
Yeah.
And how much more did that take? And not a whole lot more effort, but you know what? It's so good that I'm talking about it.
Sure.
And I referred them to others. Now, did they do a better job of repair? I don't know. I think our challenge today is so many companies are good. So many companies. We talk about the shift from being product centric, which is most of history, right? In business, we're so good at what we do and we know everything about our product or service and we sell it to as many people as possible. That's market share, right?
Yeah.
Certainly very valid. But what happens when everybody in your category, and you got to be honest with yourself, those who are listening, there's so many others who are really good at what they do. Other products, you go buy a refrigerator, they're all good. I mean, some have a few more features, but what happens when everybody's good? I think our real opportunity to gain competitive advantage and market share is by being much better at understanding our customers and their wants and their needs and their hopes and their fears and what drives their decisions and what drives them away. This was an organization. I mean, everybody who's in the auto repair industry, they're pulling from the same talent pool.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows how to do it. They found a way to stand out by not only doing a good job, but making the process fun. I mean, it's not fun. You don't have your car. You know it's going to cost a fortune. None of that's fun. So they found a way to make it kind of interesting. So
Sure.
The answer to your question is I think that the best companies are small companies who are doing something consistent and different. It's just kind of how they do it. They look at it differently. And I challenge everybody listening is think about those companies that you love. Think about when you were back in school. What was the teacher that you loved? What did they do differently?
So,
can you model those kinds of things?
So if I was then to kind of boil it down to a piece of advice that
Sure.
if I was to say to you, okay, so people are listening to it and they're thinking about that from their business perspective, but actually, you and me, you and I know, both know that some people are. So there are different types of people. Some people are almost like pure self-starters. They're like going, right, brilliant, I'm off, and then they just go off and do stuff and learn stuff and things, and then a large group of people just need some instructions.
Sure.
Right. So if I would say to you, best advice, one piece of your best advice to execs, leaders, professionals, practitioners that are in this sort of space, if you say, go off and do this one thing, what would it be?
Sure. I think it's one thing, but it's in two parts.
Okay.
And the one thing is to look at your customer's journey from the very beginning to the customer, or to the very end. And the beginning doesn't start when they're buying from you. The beginning starts when they have a problem or a question and they're looking for a resource. So where are they looking? They're looking online. Who are they choosing and why? Who are they going up against? When they call you, who answers the phone? Are they emailing? Who's getting that? And then through the searching about it and the delivery and the follow-up and the billing and all the above, look at every point of contact. And first ask the question, this is the two parts. Number one is there something along there that's causing some friction? Is there something that we're doing it the way we want to do it, but they don't? I mean, we create this process. We call it the franchise model, right? With a greater level of predictability in the customer path. If we drive them to do it this way, and they buy here, and they search here, and then we have greater predictability of outcome and revenue and profit. The problem is not every one of our situations and scenarios match your employee manual, right?
Sure.
So look at every point of contact and then ask the questions. Is that the way it should be done? Could it be done better or faster or smarter or more conveniently or more predictably or more intuitive? Can we do it with one click? So number one part is I fix all the problems. If there's anything that may be a little bit frustrating or delay them in being able to purchase or contact or talk to somebody, fix that as best you can.
Yeah.
And the second part is once you've fixed all the problems, which of course is what the book is about, then look at saying, okay, now how can we enhance that? Is there a point of, ask the question at every point of contact, is that the way it should be done? And
Sure.
the answer to most of those is yes, because you're good at what you do. But there's opportunities there, especially with new technology, with the real cognizance of what other people are doing, to maybe do it a little more memorably, maybe a little more fun at that point of contact. But it starts with the journey. It starts with grabbing a piece of paper and literally spelling out 20 steps that every customer is going to go to. Don't be too broad. Be very, very specific. Fix the things that are frustrating, and then brainstorm with your team. This is what I do when I'm brought into organizations, is I facilitate this of saying, let's ask some questions. If you could wave a magic wand, if money wasn't an option, if technology wasn't an option or wasn't a problem, what would you do differently? How could you do it different or creative? And some of the ideas, some of the best ideas come from their own team, from their own staff. And when they say things like, what would be really cool is what happens if somebody went to the chat feature and they got like a person on a camera, and that person was actually in the store, and the camera was on a drone, and it followed them around the store, and they could ask questions of somebody, and they could search the store with the employee because the camera was on a drone. And I mean, that's how you do it.
Awesome.
Is you ask what if.
Perfect. So, David, thank you for that. I mean, thank you for giving us a sense of who you are and what you do, and also the sense of the book and everything else. I mean, I think it's fun because it explores it from a different perspective, and it talks about some of these issues in very much in customer language because and it's a very story driven approach. So, where can folks buy the book and find out more about you?
Sure, absolutely. The new book is called Why Customers Leave and How to Win Them Back. It's on Amazon. It's on audiobook in my own voice. It's on Kindle, of course. It's on hardback as well. And then you can look me up at visibilityinternational.com.
Fantastic.
And all information about me, my speaking, if you want to bring me in. And I'm one of those people, I actually answer my own email. So if you just send an email to david@davidavrin.com, I'm happy to chat with you.
Perfect. And one final thing, I've been doing my own piece of ongoing social research, or focus groups, as it were. And because I've recently published a new book called Punk CX, which I've sort of told you about. And what I've been doing, I've been starting to ask people for input on two things. So the first one is, what one or two words do you think would describe a punk approach to CX?
You know what? I'll use my word, which is visibility. And what I love about the concept of punk CX is saying, listen, if you're going to be creative, if you're going to put something in the market, why do it and not be noticed?
Right.
Are you not being counterintuitive? And what I loved about the whole punk movement was it was demanding to be paid attention to.
Yeah.
Is you will not be able to ignore us. You can like us, you can not like us, but you will notice us. And so that level of visibility that comes from, as I said, if you want people to talk about you, give them something to talk about.
Fantastic. And so the second question was, do you have a company or a brand in mind that you think epitomizes that sort of punk CX ethos?
Oh, you know what? I don't want to fall into the trap of saying something like Apple.
Yeah.
But they do because I think they're always innovating to such an extent. Others are iterations of that. But I think sometimes it's the crazy van that drives by that in your town where you are that has a big bright something and it says pay attention to me. And I think I'm not thinking of anything else off the top of my head, but there's the ones who have an ad on television that says something different. Not the ones. Here's the opposite. Is all of the. I think there are 6 commercials going on TV right now that use owls as their spokesperson, saying who, who, and I just literally throw up in my mouth every time I see it. I'm like, somebody just paid millions of dollars for one of the worst campaigns ever, yet everybody does it again and again because it's safe. And the problem with safe is one of my favorite lines is that consensus kills creativity. If you try to be acceptable to everybody, you won't be exceptional to anybody.
Perfect. David, I love that, and I think that's probably a really good note to finish on. And so what I wanted to say is just congratulations on the book.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for sharing your time and your experience and your insight with us today. I'll make sure I get all that written up and edited and everything else. Give you a big shout out when it goes live. But once again, just thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you, my friend. Good luck with your book as well.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new, and I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.